welcome to my channel. I'm Ophelia and my content is all about things Wicca, witchcraft, tarot, and today's video, which is books. So if any of that is interesting to you, then do think about subscribing for more content. Like I said, I am back with another book review. This book is not actually specific to Wicca or witchcraft, it's actually astrology. But I did decide to include this in my reviews because it's a topic that I'm interested in, and I know there are a lot of Wiccans and witches out there that do also like to include astrology in their practice. However, if you are not a Wiccan or witch but you just have an interest in astrology, then welcome along. This book review is for you as well. The book that I'm reviewing today then is this one. It's Mindful Astrology, Finding Peace of Mind According to Your Sun, Moon and Rising Sign, and it's by Monte Farber and Amy Zerner. I was given this as an advanced electronic copy through NetGalley and from Rockpoint, who are part of Quarto publishing group. So it was a free copy that I was given for review. Okay, so let's get on with the review. As you probably noticed, there are two authors of this book, Monte Farber and Amy Zerner, and they are described as best-selling master astrologers, so it sounds very impressive. But they are a couple that know a lot about their subject and they have plenty of experience in this area. So as well as astrology, they also specialise in tarot, in oracle and other areas of divination. They have been part of the spiritual guidance community and teaching since 1988, so that's over 30 years of experience in this area. The authors are a couple and they've written a lot of best-selling books together. So some other titles that they have include The Enchanted Tarot, Astrology for Wellness, an Astrology Cookbook, and they also have the Wild Goddess Oracle, which is an oracle deck. Onto the book itself then. So obviously it's about astrology, but what particular aspects of astrology does it look at? So the title Mindful Astrology makes me think about obviously mindfulness, maybe a little bit of a self-care vibe, and just being more aware of your surroundings and being in the moment. So along with that, the book is described as teaching you how to use the essentials of astrology to more mindfully navigate your life and your relationships. The introduction does explain a little bit more about the mindfulness aspect of the book. So the authors see astrology as being part of a mindfulness practice that you use in your everyday life. So the purpose of the book is to use astrology as a tool to get to know yourself better in order to benefit your life and your relationships. The book is split into sections. The first section is a little bit of the background and the theory, so things like what is astrology, how does it work, and it does give you an explanation of exactly what the sun, the moon and the rising signs are and what they can tell us about ourselves personally. They also give you a little bit of an explanation as to how your birth or natal chart works. So basically, you may have seen it before, it's a circle that shows the alignment of the sun, the moon and the planets in relation to the time that you were born. So they do explain this in a lot more detail in the book, and the authors actually reference a pizza being cut into slices. The analogy didn't quite work for me, but it is a tricky topic, so I can understand why they chose to do that, and they were basically trying to simplify it. The next three sections then focus on the sun sign, the moon sign and the rising sign, with a chapter for each one. So the idea is that you would read the section of each chapter that corresponds to your sign. So for example, my sun sign is Pisces, so I read the Pisces section in the sun chapter. My moon is Taurus, so that's the section I read in the moon chapter. And my rising sign is Sagittarius, so I read that section in the rising chapter. I think the book is definitely good for beginners, so people that are wanting to know just that little bit more about astrology. So you may already be familiar with your sun sign, so the position the sun was in when you were born, and it's usually what you say when people ask you what your sign is. The book works from that point and just adds a little bit more to it. So like I said, it looks at the moon sign, so the position the moon was in when you were born, and your rising sign. If at this point you're a little bit confused and you're not actually sure what your sun, moon and rising signs are, then this is something that you can just find out online. So cafeastrology.com is a website that I use for those sort of things. But the book itself as well, it does actually give you details as to how to go about finding out your signs. Okay, so that's the basics of how the book works. So now I'm going to move on and share some of my thoughts with you. Right, so firstly, as someone who is delving a little bit deeper into the astrology realm, I will say that there is a little bit more to astrology than just those three things that are covered in the book. But the sun, the moon, the rising signs are always a good place to start. The sun sign alone doesn't really give you a clear picture of yourself, it's far too broad. So adding the moon sign and the rising sign to this picture can give you a little bit more depth to your astrology readings. But like I said, just remember that there is even more to it than that, so such as the planetary placements. Having said that, this book is definitely a good place to start, and the mindful aspect is a very soft and gentle introduction to the topic. As I said, you only really need to read the sections that apply to you and your signs, so that's what I did. There wasn't really much point in me reading the other sections that didn't apply to me, so I can only tell you if the sections that apply to me actually resonated with me. Starting with the chapter about sun signs then, it's probably the biggest chapter. It is really nice and thoughtful information, and it does give you something to think about. As you're reading it, you will naturally try and link it to yourself and your behaviour in life. You might identify some areas that feel familiar and start to think about how you can be more mindful of certain character traits in various aspects of your life. One aspect that I didn't love about the book, and it's actually something that comes up in a lot of astrology books, is the use of "you are" statements. So for example, it will say "you are like this," or "you feel this way," or "you do or don't like this." And I always think to myself, you don't know me, if that makes sense. It's just a little bit too familiar. I'd prefer it if they avoided those big sweeping statements. Just add a may or a might. So you might feel this way, or you may see things this way. I know that it's a book about exploring our character and our emotions and our feelings that apply to the signs of the zodiac, etc. But I do still think that, you know what, we're not all the same and not everything is going to resonate with everyone. But again, that could just be a personal dislike for me. Moving on to the moon sign then, so this section is a lot shorter. So whereas previously there were maybe 3 pages per sign for the sun section, we've now moved to just a paragraph for each sign, so it's barely half a page, which is slightly disappointing. Again, I felt like I resonated with some areas of it, but I still didn't like the familiarity of the "you are" statements. Lastly, the rising sign section. Even though the authors do say that the rising or the ascendant sign is one of the most important things you will ever know about yourself, they still only attribute maybe 1 page per sign for this chapter. Again, this was a little bit disappointing because, like they referenced themselves, some astrologers believe that actually your rising sign can be a lot more telling about who you are as a person compared to your sun sign. In this section, they also attempt to define your physical appearance, based on your rising sign, which is not actually something that I've come across before. And it was really wrong for me. I mean, tall, I'm only 5'2". Another thing that I was slightly disappointed with was that for the most part, the sun, moon and rising signs were dealt with as individual things. So rather than what they tell us about ourselves when they appear together, if that makes sense. So for example, it told me what having a Pisces sun means, what having a Taurus moon means, but what do these two things mean when they appear together? There is a little bit about this in the last chapter or the last section of the book. So for example, it will give you a little bit of information about if all your signs come from the same element. So if you have all water signs, or maybe if you're a combination of the elements like I am. So I have a water sign, an earth sign and a fire sign. But again, it is only a little section and I just felt like it wasn't detailed enough for me. It could be because, like I said, I'm further along in my astrology studies, so I am looking for more deeper meanings and links. But I do feel to have a truly personal reading, you need to think about how your sun, moon and rising signs work together rather than just individually. But I suppose thinking about it, that is something that is difficult to do in a book just because there are so many different combinations out there. You are probably better off going to an astrologer and having them read your birth chart or your natal chart if you're wanting something a little bit more personal. Overall then, there are a few things to consider about this book. Firstly, as you only need to read the sections that apply to you, it can feel like some of the book is irrelevant or almost wasted. So I would suggest maybe reading it with family and friends as well, so you can explore other people's birth charts. It's actually quite a fun activity, even if people don't really put much stock in astrology. Then you'll find that they still sit there and either agree or disagree with the assessments. Also, I feel like once I'd read my sections, that was it. It's not a book that I will probably come back to for reference or guidance, especially because it didn't really give you any actionable steps about being more mindful once you'd read the information. So as I said at the start, it is a book for beginners, and I think that is who this book is really good for. If you are looking to learn astrology and apply it to yourself specifically, then that's definitely what it is good for. The information in the book is really thoughtful and it just comes across as really nice, if that makes sense. I can't really think of a better word to describe it. It just has a nice vibe in the way that the authors deliver the information. And it does have all the information that you need if you are a beginner in this area. So introductory explanations to astrology itself, to the sun, moon and rising signs, and to the birth or natal chart. So if you are a beginner looking for a little insight into your personal astrology and applying it to various aspects of your everyday life, then this is a good little book to start with. My more advanced astrologers out there will probably want something a little bit more in depth. Okay, well that's all my thoughts on this one for today. I hope that you found the review useful. If you do have any questions about the book or anything related, then please do leave them down in the comments and I will try to answer them. Thanks again for watching guys, and I will see you in the next video.